Morning, Nikki. Thank you so much for giving me some time. It's nice to see you again. I'm here to talk about disability inclusion in the workplace. I know you've been doing some amazing things here. So can you start by just telling me what your ambition is? What's your goal for disability inclusion? Where do you see yourself going to?
Lovely to see you, Sarah. So we, from a Virgin's perspective, we are really inclusive. We have been over 50 years, really, from when Richard set everything up. And I would say that rather than us having really specific end goals, we feel we try and live our best life and try and be as inclusive as possible. And so with that, we feel we're constantly on a journey of learning. And learning means that we know there's always areas where we can improve and do better. And I would say, in particular, when you look around certain areas, such as we've done an awful lot around gender, we've done a lot around sexual orientation, I would say we've started really well in terms of our journey around employees that have disabilities, whether that's hidden, whether that's more visual. But there's always still more to do. We have just moved into this wonderful building here.
Looking forward to seeing it.
And it was forefront of our mind, even sort of 2 years ago when we first secured the building. This building's 50 years old, so we had all sorts of really physical challenges that came with it. But always right from the start was forefront of thinking, how do we make sure this is really accessible, really inclusive to all employees? Because that's really been the first opportunity we've been able to make a mark with the physical location.
Yes.
And look, we've been really excited in terms of what we've done. We're still learning, we're still hearing feedback, we'll still keep adapting, because our ultimate goal is we want everyone to feel like they really belong here and they feel really included. However they show up, whatever their lived experiences are, that's what we want to go and create. And obviously the physical building's really important, but also culturally, the environment, what you're going to create is the ultimate for people.
And you can I feel that it feels like not many other workplaces that I go to, so it does feel very inclusive when you come in. That's great. So one of the things that lots of people ask me is, how do I make a business case for disability inclusion? But it sounds to me like your inclusion thinking is so embedded in your organisation that you've never had to really make formally a business case. So what makes it okay to spend the money to do this sort of stuff?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We don't have formal business cases, and I have been in other organisations where you absolutely have to do that, which in itself I think says something about the culture when you do have to do that. We don't, because there is a just deep belief that we should be the most inclusive employer that we can be. So we do lots of things depending on the situation. We clearly had, when we had a massive investment, say in the building, we knew we were going to be making a big investment, but we made upfront very conscious decisions that there would be allocated investment to make sure that there were certain areas around, whether it's the accessibility or the inclusive feel of the building, we would definitely go and spend extra. And look, we put it forward, and we got the support to go and do that, knowing that it was a higher investment than maybe we could have originally spent, but we genuinely believed that was sort of future-proofing our building, the sort of environment we were creating. So we have quite specific situations where there's sort of big spend. And then, to be honest, on all the other things, it just makes business sense, whether it's around looking at some of our hiring practices, whether it's thinking about some of the adjustments we need. You sort of have to go with understanding where the needs are and then going to go and make some of those changes with it.
Yeah. It'd be good to talk about the building in a bit more detail in a moment. But the other thing I'm conscious of is that disability inclusion, physical location is part of it. But a lot of it sits with the line managers and the leaders, and how they think about it. So what's your sense of where you are on the journey, the leaders thinking about, do they create a world in which they are transparent about conditions they might have? Create a world where colleagues can equally be transparent. How far do you think you are on that journey? Yeah.
So, well, look, let's start with, we have an amazing founder, Richard, who his leadership, in particular around his own personal disability, around being dyslexic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been second to none. I'm sure you'll be aware and you followed it, but he has always been incredibly open around being dyslexic. I think he's changed the narrative, the description around it, as in it's not a disability, it is a superpower. And he has actively worked, in particular with Made by Dyslexia, to go and open that conversation and open that discussion around it is okay to bring different lived experiences, think in a different way. In fact, it can be incredibly creative. And we were delighted when a couple of years ago we, Made with Dyslexia has been absolutely amazing. They partnered with LinkedIn, and we, through Richard's advocacy and leadership, there's now a dyslexic thinking skill. Which is amazing. And there's thousands of people that have got to say, yeah, absolutely, I've got that skill, and that's me. So one, we are absolutely led from our founder, who has been really open. And look, that sets the tone. And interestingly, I've worked in other Virgin businesses, and it doesn't matter which Virgin businesses you go to, there is that openness to be yourself. I think it's fair to say some of our leaders are on that journey in terms of what they feel comfortable to open up on, in terms of some might view it a little bit of their vulnerabilities. And I think we have to keep encouraging our leaders to either open up more, or if actually they feel that they don't particularly have a disability, or they don't particularly have a sort of lived experience that feels very different to others, actually how do they go and create the environment where it feels safe and it's okay to go and disclose that. So I would say work in progress, but obviously we all around us, the work Richard does absolutely sets the tone that that's absolutely fine to do, which I think is really positive, but always still more work to do.
But the tone from the top is vital, isn't it? You had somebody at the top. But one of the things I've become quite passionate about is the sense that if senior leaders don't feel able to share their own vulnerabilities or conditions or weaknesses, whatever Richard would call them, that actually that creates a world in which people further down also don't feel safe to share, because if they see somebody about not sharing, then they tend to believe that not sharing is normal. So for me, part of the conversation I've been trying to have is with senior leaders, say, actually, I know it's a choice whether you share or not, but if you choose not to share, there are consequences which come with that. And there's this veil of secrecy that falls over the organisation. So I think it's lovely when you've got somebody at the top who's so clear enough. Yeah, it makes it easier for everybody else to come into the party, I think.
I think what's also interesting is we know there are some leaders that feel worried or less confident about how to handle conversations with people if they feel some of their lived experiences are really quite different from those around them. And so we've also done some work around how do we help build that confidence. So we've partnered with different external agencies that also then come and help bring some training to go and help open up and just start that conversation, help people understand what language to use, what's appropriate, what's not. Because actually in this day and age, some people feel really fearful about what they're allowed to say, what they're not, are they going to offend, all with good intent. And so helping our leaders build that confidence, I also think is really important. So it's never one thing, as you know, it's always multiple things to then go and help help create that right environment.
Yeah, no, that's good. So let's go back and talk about the office, because you have done some fantastic things here. So what sort of things, from an accessibility point of view, did you pick up when you were starting to think about how you fitted the office out? What were the accessibility things that were in your mind? And did you find in the end that it was the expensive things that made the difference, or were there things that were actually relatively cheap and easy to do that actually did make, surprisingly, a good return for the investment, as it were?
Yes. From an accessibility perspective, it was a pretty tricky building, 50 years old. It was a shell with 5 floors of all sorts. So we're right in the middle of a residential set of flats as well. So there's all sorts of conditions and requirements we had to consider. So it was quite a hard space to work with. So we have made sure and worked within the space that we have vertical lifts, but because we have got multiple levels, so that anyone that's a wheelchair user can come in and access any floor. Yeah. That was really important. That was actually quite difficult to go and do, just given, again, building space where Mrs. put lifts where we couldn't. But the designers worked really hard because that was just a kind of non-negotiable. It wasn't, we'd only let people access certain floors and not others. We've got that. We were really aware of our welcome when people came in. So the physicality of someone that uses a wheelchair coming in and having that experience of, the reception desk be higher than their eye level, etc. And so we've got multiple levels. So our receptionists can welcome anyone, doesn't matter how they show up. Yeah. They've got that sense of openness. We're also really aware, and actually we have quite a large proportion of neurodiverse colleagues that work here. And so again, really thoughtful. We'd had feedback before in our previous office that people found it really hard with the noise levels. Where could they find quiet space? Yep. People found it hard to be at their best. And so there was a lot of thought given in how do you, and this costs no money at all, how could you design the building where you sort of had created different noise levels. So this didn't cost us anything. There was just thinking about actually going, how do you use your space? And so we have downstairs that's the most lively. We've created it to, sofas, chairs, people come and connect. They had their lunch, etc. So you'd expect it to be noisy. We've got the color scheme is brighter or red, etc. And then as you work up each floor, it gradually becomes calmer and calmer. So the colours and the tones we've used gradually go softer and softer the further up the building. And then our top floor is our quiet zone. Yeah. And it's very clear. It's as you walk in there, it says, shh, it's a quiet zone. And it's absolutely for those colleagues that might be neurodiverse and they just work at their best in that quiet environment, or indeed people that have very focused work they want to do. And so it's flexible space. People just go and book their desk or book their space to go and do it. It's really working for us. And you notice it in the building. You arrive in the morning, it's all lively downstairs. And then as you go up each floor, it just gradually goes quieter. And so people find their space. That cost us nothing. That just made us it was us really thinking about the different requirements of our teams and how people work. Not everyone likes, the lively space. And if they do, they can head downstairs and go and find like-minded people. And if they like the quiet space, they can sort of head upstairs.
And it's also the same people at different times, isn't it? So, I would find that there's a lot of time I like to be in an open office so I can see what's going on and I can talk to people. Sometimes I want to get my head down and do something that needs a bit of peace and quiet. And so I go up on your calm top dog for those sort of strategy paper writing sessions, just me. Whereas even if I lived my life basically on floors 1 and 2, most of the time. No, it's good. And you've obviously had an amazing opportunity here to take a building which you bought and you've created almost from scratch your ideal. A lot of people are trying obviously to work with buildings that they've already got, that might be leased space even that they don't have that much control over. Yeah. What do you do, because you have other spaces apart from this, obviously, as an office space.
Yes.
How do you make sure in those other office spaces that people are able to ask for and get the adjustments they need in a space that is not purpose-built?
Yes. And look, before this, we're really lucky to have this space. Before we had this space, we were the same as everybody else, as in working in existing offices where we had to adapt. So we've completely been there. The really important thing is the environment, the openness for people to be able to get their adjustments. So I would say there's two very distinct things we do. We anyway have the option of people to go and request adjustments, whatever that looks like, very personal, individual, and we don't have huge numbers of people that work in this part of the office, but we are very receptive and we have a whole range of things. Predominantly, it's more from neurodiverse people that have asked for adjustments. So that's more our theme here. But we know across other Virgin companies, it's all sorts of things from sort of, needing sort of physical environment adjustments. And typically we respond to that on an individual basis and we try our hardest to go and make those changes. And I would say we, pretty successful with that. So that's one route. And then the other thing we do, which I think is really, really important, is we really lean on our employee networks, best way to describe it. We call it our inclusion network. So we have all our various different employee groups together because I don't think people sit in individual boxes. I absolutely hate it, or an individual group. Most people have lived experiences across lots of things, depending on their gender, their disability, their sexual orientation, whatever it is. Yeah. We're all a bit different. And so we've brought all of that in together. You think about how do we truly create an inclusive business and an experience for people. And then we have within that group people that specialize in certain areas, often with lived experiences. And we use that, or we really get great insight from that group to be saying collectively, this is how people are feeling, or this is some feedback. Because sometimes that feels easier for people. Sometimes that's quite hard to do it on an individual basis. So we use that as well. And they're a really, influential group. They have access through to, well, in particular myself from a people perspective, because obviously a lot of it's related to our workplace and our teams. But there is access to whichever leader they would want to go and share that with. And we go and hear that through that group. Yeah. And obviously the same as I think lots of other employee groups, there's obviously, we use certain moments throughout the year to go and focus on areas. Yeah. So to go and raise awareness, go and educate more.
Yeah. So what's the most popular adjustments? What do people ask for most of the time?
So for us here, it's been around the quiet space. Yeah. I mean, that's been the thing that we felt the most. We have the last few years until we moved into this building was probably our toughest. And we had to then think about actually, do people work from home more rather than come into the office? So we were very sensitive about, for example, we haven't mandated for people to come in because we knew for some that was just too difficult to ever do. So you have to adjust to your environment. You can't, it's not always one size fits all, but that probably has been our biggest change coming into here. And then we then have, individual requests, which, whether it's around, lighting, different physical environments that we would then go and respond to. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, you can make an adjustment and make it easier for the individual.
And they're not always that expensive, aren't they? I think people tend to believe that these adjustments are going to be very expensive, but certainly a lot with tech tools that we use have lots of accessibility built into them. If only you knew what to look for.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes I find with organisations, it's partly about helping them to understand what is available easily that the colleague can tape without really having to feel like they're standing out asking for something special. It's just all embedded, and they can they can get the value out of it because it's already there. I think.
And we're currently experimenting with Microsoft Copilot, where we're using sort of small test groups to go and understand how do we go and use that more, and we eventually want to share that with everyone. So yes, we're always on a journey of learning. I don't think we claim to be the best. Yeah. We absolutely keep learning from others and thinking, how do we go and adapt?
Yeah. Do you find that having a greater level of understanding of accessibility and inclusivity in the workplace helps you to think about that for customers? Because one of the things I think for a lot of businesses is we see, 1 in 4 people in the population as having some form of disability or long-term health condition. 2 in 5 of whom say they can't find the products and services they need, mostly because they're buying from businesses who don't understand accessibility themselves because they're not practicing it as an organisation, so they can't deliver it for customers. Do you find it reads across once you do it inside to the outside world?
Yes, definitely. And look, I think something Virgin prides itself on is, and you probably have heard Richard say it so many times, is, we always start with our people, look after our people, because if we do that right, we'll then look after our customers. So we have such a strong link between getting things right for our employees, because we know they'll then do our best for our customers. And that flows through with lots of things. So our people, because most of our Virgin businesses are interacting with our customers, they're often first-hand experiencing what the customers are saying and not saying. And so we've taken a lot of those experiences and then fed them back through to thinking about our products and experiences. So I'll pick an example. So Virgin Australia does the try before you buy. So we knew that there's lots of customers with disabilities that actually felt really anxious about flying. It's such a big, when you think about the experience of even getting to the airport, using their wheelchair to go to the airport, getting on a plane. I mean, this is big stuff to do. And so we knew that. And so we do the try before you buy, whereby anyone can come and do the experience before flying. So they can actually go and see and understand and plan. Yeah. That's worked really well. Yeah. Virgin Atlantic have done similar things. So they actually, years ago, were one of the first airlines to go and put subtitles on the film. Right. So that actually, it became more accessible for people. They've also recently, in the last couple of years, made a commitment to have trained British Sign Language cabin crew. They're always thinking about actually if our customers there and they want to obviously be able to communicate, so we have that as well. And so we're constantly thinking about what is the experience for the customer and how do we open it up so it feels most inclusive and most accessible.
And do you think customers know that you do those things better than others? And therefore, do you think you get more customers because they understand that you've gone that extra mile?
That's really hard to think.
Yes, if we could say yes.
Yes. I think with how customers talk so positively about Virgin and the experience they have, you'd like to think that they believe we put our customers first, because we do, and therefore what comes with that is that real sort of inclusion. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So whether customers are aware of it or not, it is just the right thing to do. So we will keep doing that and hope that the kind of the stories and the endorsement follow, because we genuinely believe in.
And I think the Virgin brand does have, I mean, having sat on the Virgin Money Board for a bit, my sense is the Virgin brand has a very strong people component to it. So people are a big part of your asset in people's minds, I think.
Yes.
And that sense of you can be who you want to be with Virgin, and that it has that greater flexibility. You might say some of the other airlines have more, there's a perception of more rules, and that if you don't fit the box, you're not necessarily going to get through. Whereas I think Virgin does have this sense of personal and flexible to the person, which I think would play very much to the sense of somebody like me thinking about who do I want to travel with. Yeah, I would put Virgin at the top of my list because of that, not because I know specifically about your accessibility tools, but because my impression of your brand is that you're the sort of brand that would take care of me and would be a bit flexible to help me to make services in their journey. So it will feed through, I think.
And that's lovely to hear. I mean, I personally think it is the case, but that's the amazing thing about our people, because our people, whether it's as you go into the gym, you go on the flight, you go into a hotel, the cruise, is people want to go and please our customers, and they are welcoming whoever you are and however you show us and whatever your lived experiences are. And because we encourage that with our people themselves to be like that, I think that naturally sort of spreads out, and there's a ripple effect because we say that's okay for them to be themselves. And so we get the best out of them. And I hear that creates the best for our customers.
Yeah, I think it does. So we've got a big conference coming up in 3 weeks now, roughly, actually, April 2025. We're very much focused on actions to help people to embed disability inclusion in their organisations. So you've got a load of experience. We just talked about, probably skimmed the surface of some things you've done, I suspect. But if you were to say to the hundreds of leaders who are going to be at that conference, one action for them to take. So we've got 62 speakers. We're going to have 62 actions, but you could add yours to it. What would your one action be for people from everything you've learned? What's one thing you would say to businesses to do?
So I'm going to share a really personal one, because it had such a fundamental shift to how I've thought about inclusion. I've been reverse mentored when I was at Virgin Atlantic, and the gentleman that was very kind to be my mentor was one of our colleagues there who is a wheelchair user, and he gave me his time, and he opened up and shared his personal experiences about he's been a wheelchair user his whole life, of his life story, how he lives his life at home, how he does his job, and in particular some of the physical barriers that he has to encounter. It was truly humbling. My empathy and understanding shot up 100% compared to my own lived experiences. And it just changed my perspective, and absolutely wonderful. So that would be my strongest recommendation. You have to live in the shoes of others, especially those that have experiences that you do not personally have. And that just opens your eyes. And for me, that was really fundamental. I did that about sort of 6-7 years ago. And you look and think about things differently because you've got an appreciation of what someone else has gone through. Yeah. And like I say, he was incredibly gracious to be very, very open on everything, which I think really helps. And I hope I helped create the environment that was absolutely, I would respect and trust what he was sharing, and that we would keep that, which is what the power of having a mentoring relationship is. And for me, it was absolutely groundbreaking, and I would encourage others to go and do that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I know people who travel with me, I'm also a wheelchair user, are quite often staggered by the little barriers that you face all the way through the day, which you don't. And I was blind too as well before I had this experience. So yeah, you're right. I think to sit in the shoes of somebody who is going through that, all of a sudden the world changes to be a different thing, doesn't it? You see barriers you never knew were there before.
Absolutely.
So